This is the Yocal Idaho Midweek Report, where we give you a quick overview of the news in Idaho for the last week. For our first segment of stories, we'll be looking at what is Proposition 1, because you've probably seen a lot of those signs going around the state and may not know what on earth is Proposition 1. We'll also be looking up at Coeur d'Alene, where there was a racial incident earlier this year, and that's come to a close, surprisingly. We'll also be looking at how Boise says Idaho needs more gun laws. In not the great way, but Boise's doing Boise there. And to wrap up the first section of the show, we'll also do an update on in-and-out construction here in the Trojan Valley, because we talked about what was going on with it over in eastern Idaho. Idaho voters are facing a little bit of a crucial decision this November, from the national elections to representatives and different levies and things. But one of the biggest ones related to Idaho is Proposition 1, which is being misleadingly branded as the Open Primaries Act, which that looks good on scoring stuff. It's being pushed by Reclaim Idaho and other left-leaning organizations, which have a strong feeling if you're in Idaho and you're listening to this, you're probably leaning Republican. Prop 1 claims to increase voter participation, but we would actually argue it aims to dismantle Idaho's current political party system, and something that we've been very happy with for a long time. But getting into the details, the first part that you need to know about Proposition 1 is that, contrary to the name of an open primary, it doesn't really create a full open primary. It instead eliminates partisan primaries altogether and replaces them with a jungle primary. So it's not open, where the top 4 candidates advance regardless of party. A little bit concerning there, because the Republican Party can't say, this is our Republican candidate. It's just whoever puts the R next to the name that gets the majority of votes moves on to the general election. And then the second part that Proposition 1 does is that in the general election, it would use ranked choice voting. You might be wondering, what on earth is ranked choice voting? Voting's voting. Just let me vote. It is a confusing system that allows voters to rank multiple candidates. So you don't just have one vote. You can place multiple, and then an algorithm tries to find the majority one. The initiative undermines the one person, one vote principle, if you've heard that going around, and weakens political parties, which plays a crucial role in the main purpose of the organizers for voters and promoting those values that they're looking for. Ranked choice voting has led to voter confusion, as you can guess, because we're really used to, I have one vote and I put it one place, and kind of some unexpected outcomes wherever it is implemented, particularly up in Alaska. It does have the high likelihood and potential, even if you don't believe in the political side of it. It's just a really new thing and has the potential to disenfranchise voters who don't really fully understand the system or use it, rather than just staying with the tried and true that's worked pretty good here in Idaho. Then you might be asking, if it's such a convoluted system, why is it being pushed? Why is it being encouraged? Prop 1 supporters want to avoid the ranked choice voting part, because that's the part when you look at public polls, they don't like that much, and instead focus on the misleading claims of it being an open primary rather than a jungle primary that just gets rid of any controls on the primary system at all. They're also backed by some out-of-state interest groups, hoping to crack Idaho's conservative stronghold that we have here, because if they want things from out of state, they're having a really hard time trying to do it with the current voting system we have. And with that said, bringing it all boiled down into a conclusion, Prop 1 is a standout attempt, as you can guess with all of this, to break the support that Republicans and conservatives have built here in the state. And I would say the average Idahoan is very supportive and likes and enjoys, so that more left-leaning or progressive groups can finally get their policy passed here. Now, if all of this still didn't make sense, but you're really interested now and you're like, hey, what is this? What's going on? You want to go into it deeper and learn about the dangers of Prop 1 and the importance of kind of Idaho's current election system, I would highly encourage you to go check out the Gem State Chronicle with Brian Ullman. He has a really comprehensive article on this, also citing some other sources in it that you can go look at. It'll be linked below in the show notes for this podcast. Highly recommended if you want to go into the weeds and learn all about that. But moving on to the weeds, especially up north, you may or may not remember this incident. It flew in and out of the radar. It did make national news, but here in Idaho wasn't talked about too much. Shocker. But up in Coeur d'Alene, a man admitted to shouting racial slurs at some youth soccer players during a May tournament that had some out-of-state people, if you remember that. City prosecutors have decided to decline to press any charges. Specifically, the incident involved a Canadian youth players and saw a passenger in a truck yelling offensive slurs, including, as you can guess, with the national attention it got, the N-word. While police identified the individual involved, the case didn't meet the legal threshold for malice harassment under Idaho law. This event, one of a few reported racial incidents up in that area up north, caused Coeur d'Alene to pass a new ordinance addressing hate crimes, air quotations there. In conclusion, since they're not pressing charges, there's not much more to report on there, just that it's getting wrapped up with a bow. But I think a good thing with this situation is to remind us that it is important to see each other as image bearers of God and judge them based on their character rather than their appearance. And it's always a good thing to remember. And it is still a valuable time, even in a culture which is hyper fixated on racial stuff. It also, with this, reinforces that there is a right to free speech in America, that you can say stuff as long as you're not physically harming a person. Just because you're offended doesn't mean we're going to be prosecuting people. We should be able to let our ideas die, not ourselves. And speaking of an idea that keeps going back and forth and dying and coming back to life, Boise is revisiting a long-held vision to extend Lake Hazel Road, potentially expanding the city's footprint southward. The proposed 5-mile extension would connect southwest and southeast Boise, linking Orchard Road near Alder Industry Park to Emerson Road. The specific details on the project is that it's estimated to cost between $50 to $70 million. And the aim of it would be to improve connectivity and unlock industrial land for development to the south of Boise. While the plan has been on the city's radar for quite some time, we'll put it that way. I've heard about it talked for a long time. Its high cost has kept it from getting momentum and really just kept it more in a dormant state. City council members are now considering it, recommending some updated studies, seeking federal grants to make it more possible, and also exploring private developer contributions to move the project forward, where they could develop more land closer to Boise, which they could get a premium out of. The extension could, in theory, is an important word there, alleviate traffic congestion and support industrial growth. But some concerns with it and pushback that were mentioned were potential urban sprawl, the project impact on other city priorities that Lauren McLean might have. Sorry, couldn't help it there. And has also sparked a debate on the city council members about that and funding and being a little bit of a wedge issue. But in conclusion, despite all the challenges that we just mentioned there, the project does remain a key part of Boise's long-range planning vision, especially with the demand for houses and people wanting to move there. And you can only have so much land, so you might as well go further south. And speaking of land and development and things that city councils love to play with, as we talked about last week, In-N-Out is expanding in Idaho, particularly over in eastern Idaho, but also a lot here in the Treasure Valley, particularly with the highly anticipated In-N-Out Burger in Nampa, which is actually progressing very steadily, with construction crews actively working on the site, so it's not that they're doing a little bit and then leaving. Specifically with the Nampa location, located near the Treasure Valley Marketplace, the new restaurant is set to join the recently opened Meridian location, which is totally busy all the time, unless you go inside. Hint, don't go the drive-thru, you can get through quicker, which has been serving Idaho's Californian burger enthusiasts, if you know what I mean there. While there isn't an official opening date for the Nampa store, the project has garnered significant local interest, particularly being shown by a local Facebook page dedicated to tracking wait times, already amassing over 500 followers, so a little bit interesting there. City officials reported a smooth permitting process, though, noting that the site's previous use as a TGI Fridays restaurant simplified the approval process because it was already approved for a restaurant. The city is collaborating closely with In-N-Out to prepare for the potential traffic challenges upon opening, which for any of you that know that Carter intersection, heaven help them. But over with the Boise location, so there's going to be 3 in the valley when all is said and done. It's going to be over there by the Boise Mall, if you haven't heard about it, and work is continuing with that. Granted, there's less details going on with that, but they are still working on it. But moving forward, as construction continues, In-N-Out's expansion here in the Treasure Valley, it definitely is an interesting development for fast food and for the In-N-Out burger chain, which so many love. Which, if you like In-N-Out burgers or are just curious to try them and have liked the episode so far, please hit the like button on YouTube, Rumble, or Twitter. It helps us reach more folks who love Idaho just like you. And speaking of something that's coming from California that we don't want, in a significant blow to the drug trafficking in Idaho's Magic Valley, law enforcement agents have indicted 20 individuals on various charges related to methamphetamine distribution. Man, that's a giant word when you see on the teleprompter. This large-scale operation, led by Organized Crime and Drug Enforcement Task Force, resulted in the seizure of over 30 pounds of methamphetamines. For a little bit more detail and context on it, the 10 Magic Valley residents face drug trafficking charges, while an additional 10 are accused of conspiracy. The investigation revealed that some defendants traveled to Arizona and California to obtain drugs for distribution here in Idaho. U.S. Attorney John Hurwitz praised the collaboration between local, state, and federal agencies in this successful operation. And then coming back to the governor, Governor Brad Little also highlighted the effectiveness of the state's Operation Estro Perpetua initiative in equipping law enforcement to combat drug trafficking. Try to read that word earlier. Oh my goodness. The overall takeaway is that this coordinated effort does demonstrate the ongoing commitment to disrupt drug networks here in the state and enhance public safety in Idaho's communities where we don't want those drugs. We should be able to figure out how to live our lives without illicit substances in our bodies. And speaking of detrimental things on society, in Boise, a group of leftist activists are attempting to recall school board member Patrick Minto for his stance on defending female-only bathrooms in public schools. What? Defending that? We need to do that? Specifically, the details is Minto, elected in 2023, faced criticism for opposing policies that would allow male students to use female bathrooms and potentially hiding gender transitions from parents. That'll go over real smooth. Despite claims from recall supporters that the initiative is about broader concerns, Minto asserts it's primarily due to his refusal to support gender policies that contradict current state law. Trying to be consistent with law. If you want that, go check Idaho Bill breakdowns. Wink. With only a slim majority needed for it to pass, about 72 votes, the situation highlights the ongoing debate, especially with public schools, about gender issues and the bathroom stuff there. While some view Minto's position as controversial, it is crucial to remember he was democratically elected to represent the constituents' interests there. In conclusion, for those who support Minto's stance, the more traditional ones that we've had for most of human civilization, we would encourage you to go and vote and be involved in the process because at the end of the day, you are responsible for your local community, those that are on your school board, and those that represent you in your community. And speaking of storms and going away from figurative to literally, last week a storm swept through northern Idaho, causing significant power outages in Boundary County. The weather event occurred on September 25th/26th there, led to temporary closures of courthouses and suspension of administrative services. Despite the challenges, emergency services remain fully operational. Good, all good planning there. Specifically, the storm effects were felt across the area with down power lines requiring repair by Northern Lights and the city of Bonners Ferry. However, power restoration was delayed due to the damage of the Bonneville Power Administrative Regional Transmission Circuit. Man, that's a mouthful. Local businesses, including gas stations, were affected by the outage, as many of you up there probably know, with residents needing to seek fuel in nearby areas because those pumps need power, baby. But the overall takeaway, the storm highlights the importance of the community being prepared for stuff like this, even in a developed area, and cooperation during kind of unexpected weather events. The county's response does demonstrate that they are able and up to the task and effective to really maintain the essential services need for residents and to get things back online pretty effectively there. And speaking of things up north, a 14-year-old student at Lakes Middle School in Coeur d'Alene has been suspended following threats to shoot up a school, end quote. The Coeur d'Alene Police Department was alerted last week in the afternoon about Tuesday, prompting investigations about the incident there. Specifically, the officers visited the student's home, speaking with both the student and his parents. While the investigation is ongoing, precautions have been taken to prevent the student's return to the school, so don't worry about that if you're scared. Police believe there's no active threat, as the student likely doesn't have access to firearms. Authorities emphasize that all such threats are taken seriously and are thoroughly investigated, with the appropriate criminal charges filed if necessary. But in conclusion, the community is encouraged to remain vigilant, just saying, even if it's a 14-year-old, and report any concerning behavior to maintain a secure learning environment there at the school. Which, if you didn't hear about these stories and want someone else to, or you just love the Midweek Report, please help us spread the news about our beautiful state and share this episode with a friend or family. And keeping with the theme of schools and also politics, because we do a lot of that here, two of Idaho's largest school districts, Boise School District, or BSD, and West Ada School District, have decided to make November 5th, Election Day, a non-school day for students. This decision primarily stems from mainly safety concerns and the fact that many schools serve as polling locations. As you can guess, in Boise, 31 schools are used for voting as being the primary place and potentially bring a large number of people into school buildings. Both districts will use the day to staff professional development, with BSD offering work from home options for their staff so they can still get paid. BSD noted that they have enough time in their schedule to accommodate the change without adding extra days. So if you're a student that's worried about having something cutting into your summer break, do not worry about that. Maybe go and vote if you can. I don't know. It depends on the school. In conclusion, if you are in Boise and a student or a parent, just know there probably won't be any school. Other districts in the area are still considering their options. Some of them may or may not do it. It just depends on the concentration there and the effect it will have, with some planning to hold classes as usual and no change at all, and others implementing additional security measures if they host polling sites at schools. And speaking of the future of next year and also fun stuff for summer break, over in eastern Idaho, the 5-time Grammy winner, known for his hilarious parodies and pop hits, will perform his iconic songs over there. Specifically, with the details to the event, it shows the promise of a full experience with Al's longtime band, plus 4 additional players that he'll have there. Fans are expected to hear classics like Amish Paradise, which that one is stuck in my head, Eat It, and White and Nerdy. If you haven't heard any of those, they're probably a good fun. VIP packages are available starting September 27th, including post-show meet and greets with that, a professional photo, autographed poster, and some exclusive merchandise with that experience there. For true diehard fans that love him, there are also a Puddles Pity Party VIP option that has some pre-show perks. But in conclusion, if you're interested or anywhere in the state and love Weird Al stuff, maybe make sure to block out your calendar a little bit next August. And speaking of things in eastern Idaho that is coming back again, sadly, the Idaho State Department of Agriculture has confirmed a new detection of quagga mussels in the Snake River near Twin Falls, almost exactly a year after the initial discovery in September of 2023. Despite previous eradication efforts using a copper-based chemical, the invasive species has surfaced in the Shoshone Fall pools, Pillar Falls, and the Twin Falls Reservoir. Specifically, with the response plans and some of the concerns, this development is definitely concerning due to the mussels' rapid reproduction and potential to clog pipes and threaten water infrastructure and agriculture and hydroelectric generation, which is all of those are very important, especially over in eastern Idaho. State officials led by Director Channel Twawit emphasized their commitment to the full eradication of them. Governor Brad Little also weighed in, highlighting the state's preparedness, citing a $6.6 million budget allocation for the invasive species control. But moving forward, the situation does underscore the ongoing challenges of managing invasive species, specifically the quagga mussel, and the importance of continued vigilance in Idaho's fight against the quagga mussels over there. Also, make sure to clean your boats so they don't come back in again. And speaking of a lot of money, and this coming from out of state, Idaho has been awarded over $583 million from the Internet for All initiative, part of the Biden administrative's $42.45 billion Broadband Equity, Access, and Development, or BEAD program. That's a lot of money, makes me cry almost. Specifically, the details with the application of the funding is that it is aimed at expanding high-speed internet access in underserved areas, particularly in rural communities like those up in Shoshone County and Boundary County and those up north. We will very much agree government funding projects is often lags behind private sector efficiency. The initiative aims to address internet needs where market forces have fallen short, where there really isn't the financial benefit, but people could really benefit from the internet. The funds will be used to develop affordable, reliable internet infrastructure, which, at $1 billion or more, that's not affordable, but we'll see how it pans out. Potentially through municipal ownership setup similar to water or wastewater districts. So it's not some big federal government thing. They're trying to keep it local, give them that. Local officials are now exploring how best to utilize this opportunity, where they focus on connecting remote areas like Murray, Pitchard, and Avery. As Shoshone County Commissioner Tracy Consani noted, quote, "We'd be supportive of anything to support or enhance our internet. Gosh, we need it," end quote. If that doesn't tell you enough there. If you're watching this, you probably need a regular dose of Idaho news and quite enjoy it. So please make sure to subscribe or follow us so you don't miss any of our future content that we're working on here at Local Yocal Idaho. And staying up there in northern Idaho and political things, Kootenai County in northern Idaho is experiencing a significant increase in absentee ballot requests for the upcoming November 5th general election. Whole theme for this thing should be election on the 5th. As of Monday, the 15th, 219 voters have requested absentee ballots, nearly matching the total returned in November of 2022. Specifically details the county clerk Jeffrey Lockie contributes this surge to several factors. First, the general election, especially those with presidential races, typically drives higher turnout. Additionally, many voters who request absentee ballots for the May primary automatically receive them for November. Also, that the statewide awareness campaigns and stuff about it, including mailers from the Secretary of State's office about voter pamphlets, have also probably contributed to a little bit that people know it exists now. But moving forward, the trend does seem to hit as a growing preference for early voting options and increased political engagement in the region, which we are all for. The county has also emphasized the importance of correct signatures on those, however, and updated voter registrations to ensure a smooth absentee voting process. Speaking of things up north, it's having some upticks in its numbers. North Idaho College, NIC, is experiencing a significant enrollment boost, defying national trends, where colleges are declining attendance specifically among young men. The increase in dual enrollment students, particularly from local high schools, has been dramatic, with some schools seeing enrollment more than double, which if you don't know what dual enrollment is, you stay in high school, you're doing high school work at the same time as you're doing college work, but you can do that college work for half the price. So it might just be people aren't willing to spend the really big price tag on college stuff right now, especially young men. And I see success comes at its time, as we've been alluding to, where many colleges are really struggling with declining enrollment, especially among male students. But in conclusion, as the college's ability to attract students, particularly in the career and technical education programs, is a surprising and a white whale in a sea of otherwise lacking enrollment nationally. And speaking of big numbers and going from the national to the international, Idaho, the leader in potato production here in the United States, we love it so very much as Idahoans, is intensifying its efforts to access the Japanese market for fresh potatoes. Surprisingly, you might not know this. Despite exporting frozen potatoes to Japan since 2006, fresh potato exports have been blocked for nearly 3 decades from Idaho. I did not know that at all. Recently, a bilateral meeting was had over there in Idaho Falls, aiming to address this long-standing issues. But looking at the potential for this deal and the details that came out of the meeting, the potential market is significant for this in Japan, with estimates suggesting annual exports could reach $150 to $200 million if it went through. Also, with contrast, Idaho's potato industry harvests about 310,000 acres annually and can generate over $1.3 billion with a B in revenue, which stands to benefit greatly if this deals go through. However, Japan has delayed conducting the necessary pest risk assessment, probably as a way to stall and to possibly protect its domestic potato industry over there. U.S. officials, including Idaho Governor Brad Little, are pressing for progress, emphasizing the lack of photosanitary justification for the delay, saying, well, you're saying it needs to be clean, but you're not really giving a good reason. You've had plenty of time to do those checks. In conclusion, as the issue has garnered some bipartisan support in Congress, with ongoing diplomatic efforts to open this lucrative market for Idaho's renowned potatoes so we can go nationwide. Keeping with very big numbers, Idaho's most expensive residential property, priced at about $22.5 million, is now on the market in Parma. Known as the Treetop Ranches or Parma Lodge and Stables, this 450-acre estate owned by Laura and Marianne Williams, founders of the Idaho Timber Corporation, if you know who that is. But you might be wondering, why is this place so expensive? The property features a 9,000 square foot main residency, an 18-stall horse barn, and extensive equestrian facilities. It was inspired, the design, if you go look at the photos on the Boise Dev there, by the Kentucky Horse Farms. has been used for thoroughbred breeding, including horses that have competed in the Kentucky Derby. The state boasts a Boise River frontage, multiple lakes, and irrigated pastures and cropland. As you can guess, there's a reason for the cost. It's located just about 45 minutes from Boise and includes a manager's residence and various outbuildings. In conclusion, it does showcase the highest end of the Idaho real estate market, and just how high is high for us, and definitely not anywhere near as expensive as over in California, but get a kind of a peek at one of the most expensive places in Idaho. And speaking of expensive, I need to go off to do some other things. Thank you for listening to the entire report. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If you like the Midweek Report, please make sure to check out our other content. We're constantly working on new stuff about Idaho for you so you can stay informed and engaged in the state. Also, if we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to us via email at lyimedia@protonmail.com or tweet me at local Yocal Idaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.